So, on to the next panel. I'm excited about this one. Been an advertising guy pretty much all my working life. So we're going to meet the new live-in marketing executive. And I think as Simon mentioned just before lunch, the mobile ad industry has just got such a long way to go. And we are just starting out. And this is just the end of the beginning. I think, 4% of ad dollars spent when we as consumers are spending over 2.5 hours a day. And it just doesn't add up, doesn't match. And the mobile ad industry is worth $18 billion this year, with it set to grow to $42 billion by 2017. But I suspect even by then, we're still only 8 to 10% of the overall investment dollars in advertising. So incredibly exciting opportunity ahead of us. And mobile, like never before, has that real opportunity to answer that the sort of nirvana of what marketers really want to do, which is reach the right person at the right time with the right message, right moment. And we've been talking about that in the digital advertising industry for years. When I was at DoubleClick in 1999, I used that phrase a lot. And here we are, 2014, but I think never before has it been possible with mobile. And mobile's in a real state of flux, We have a good old friend, the banner, which doesn't half get a beating in mobile. But actually, the UA managers and the growth managers I talk to, they shrug and say, look, it works. Get standard ad format, distribution, scale, decent click-through rates, good conversions. Kind of works. Let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's not going to win any design awards, I guess, but, And then we have, the native ad format, or as Martin Sorrell reminds us, advertorials. They've got to be clearly labeled. And then the whole shift from taking the buyer out to lunch, taking him to golf, getting an IO, to bidding on impressions one at a time. Appended by data, and Flurry's launched its exchange marketplace, came out of beta in October last year. So the market's going through incredible change, and so I have real pleasure in inviting an esteemed panelist up, moderated by Delo, Chief Bureau in San Francisco for Advertising Age. So Cotton, with that, welcome, and give them a warm welcome, please.
So I thought I would ask you all to introduce yourselves. Maybe just tell us a little bit about what you do and how you approach mobile.
Okay. So I'm Tina Unterländer. I'm the director of mobile for AKQA. I've worked in mobile for a long time. So I've been trying to figure out mobile and what mobile means for our marketers for about over 9 years. So way before the iPhone came on the market and way before we had much easier to manage app stores, because they did exist before, and there was a lot of things already happening in mobile, but things became easier. And so today, I work with all of our different clients, from Nike to Target to Audi, VW, and so forth, on different mobile campaigns, trying to help them figure out what it means from a brand perspective. What is my mobile strategy, and what do I have to do to talk to the consumer of today? And so that's what I do every day.
My name is Oleg Kornfeld. I'm the SVP of Ad Technology and Platforms for MediaVest. I've been in the space for almost 17 years now, and to me, mobile is it's not new, but a platform just as important as desktop, as connected TVs, as game consoles, a platform where I can find my user in the right environment and show them the right message.
I'm Kevin Dorr, SVP Digital for the Weather Company. We spend a lot of time thinking about location, weather, of course, and trying to produce experiences that are very powerful cross-screen. We also spend a lot of time thinking about instrumentation analytics and getting a better understanding of our audience's habits and patterns and building models around that. So.
Hi, everybody. I'm Maureen Little. I run business development and corporate development for Turn. We are a data management platform, and a media execution platform. So that is utilized by advertisers or their agencies to manage their mobile ad delivery and targeting and measurement, all the fun stuff we get to talk about today.
Okay, thank you. So I thought we could start off by digesting some big news of the week in mobile advertising. Facebook is reportedly at last launching its mobile ad network. So I'd love to get your perspective on the implications of that for the mobile ad ecosystem.
I think it's huge. I don't know if you want to. So we saw them kind of come out a little bit over a year ago. And how does this affect the ecosystem? Remember that Facebook has that identity, that identifier, and they have a high usage. I think a lot of people here probably use Facebook. So if they're going to help monetize other publishers on the ad network side, I think that's great for mobile developers, mobile content. I also think they're going to leverage that ID. Again, I don't know, but I would leverage that ID to allow better targeting to the advertiser. The question will be, I think over 70% of the advertising in mobile is already going to Google and Facebook. So what are all of us going to do to make sure that we have diversified places for our ad creation and engage with users in different formats?
I mean, the ID is definitely probably the most valuable thing to me, but the segments, Facebook promises, we can leverage the segments they create based on their audiences, the behaviors, the psychographic, demographic information. To me, it's just another data point that I can use to now buy smarter, inform the impressions, media impressions smarter as I plug in different data points. Facebook is just another one.
Okay. And why do you think it makes sense for Facebook to build its own technology as opposed to doing what Twitter did, which is purchase MoPub?
Because they can.
Good answer.
I think one of the things, I think it's needed, right? So a lot of the mid-size and the smaller publishers are continually looking for ways to monetize and expand their purview and their capabilities. And larger publishers like Facebook have the opportunity to build a large ad network, can also build the stack that they need and the tool sets that they need with capabilities that are far beyond the capacity of some of the small and mid-sized publishers. So that's important that they're not relegated to just one set of tools or one stack.
Maybe there's also now an easier way to buy mobile. Like we've if I look back the past 5, 6, 7 years, it's been just very complex for some of our media planners that you had to go to to the direct publishers, to the networks, to the remnant inventory networks, to the all the different areas, and now maybe with Facebook taking this approach and maybe with a fresh mindset on how we could do things better and make it easier on media buyers, then that obviously will drive our mobile advertising business forward. And I really hope for my colleagues that will come true one day.
Yeah, hopefully, we learned on our mistakes in the desktop mobile ad network space. So as we have this access to very, very rich and important information, we can execute against it. And yeah, the automation of it and less IOs and the promise of it is definitely exciting.
Okay. And what areas within mobile advertising do you feel are the most ripe for investment and innovation over the next year? So it could be a format, a way of targeting, way of measuring. Where do you think,
I mean, to me, it's the promise of the true unique user. So Facebook connection, that one-to-one, that absolutely is. It's the replacement of the cookie. And with that, you get the accuracy. And you can build on that accuracy and put those people in the segments that you wanted to put them in the first place. So to me, that's the absolutely number one most important thing that needs to evolve in mobile.
Okay.
I think one other area is a cross-device, cross-screen capability. The extent to which we start investing more heavily in understanding and creating behavioral models for people within their own network, within their own home, as well as traveling and being migratory, understanding those models and being able to use them appropriately, sensitive to privacy, but being able to build those models and get a better understanding. I think that area of investment is still relatively new and somewhat sophisticated, but has a long way to go before a lot of the value is realized.
So we've been really focused on trying to make mobile more accessible and work for the brand advertiser, because I think if you think about how it started, it was e-commerce or someone is going to download an app. That's easy for measurement. That's easy to understand how you spend your dollars, and you get to keep your job. So one of the things Turn really believes is going to happen is the creative assets are critical. So we partner with agencies or the marketer, and coordinated messaging in your creative assets. People are doing it a little bit, but I think it's becoming kind of a standard in the same way that when you talk to large marketers, their video asset, whether it sits on a TV or on any other device, is no longer separated. I think these are kind of the trends that we see. And for that, I think removing friction. So a lot of our product effort is really about removing friction and making it easier for a brand advertiser to test and buy a very targeted set of users and be able to serve that correct message to them.
I think from my perspective, I look at it from a much higher and bigger perspective, because my daily job is not purchasing advertising. My job is really creating mobile experiences for brands. And I think that's where the major investment will be, is really creating a foundation that mobile advertising can actually lead to something, or could focus on new areas of service, on new products. And so I think that is my focus, on really creating the best mobile shopping experience, creating the best mobile support experience, creating the best experience in a sports environment. It's really, what are the key services and products that brands need to create today for today's customer, for today's consumer, who has shifted their life from the couch to being more outside, to being on their mobile device. And it's really, that's I think where the focus needs to be, really heavily from a brand perspective, to then have all the great things we can do with advertising.
Okay. Could you share some examples of that we talked about backstage?
So one of the examples that I'm sure a lot of you guys heard about, and obviously it's been back in the news this week because Nike obviously very clearly stated that they're moving out of the hardware space and really continue to focus really more on the software. And that's what we've been doing with them for a long time. So one of the examples is, for example, the Nike Training Club we created for women, specifically targeting women, and really being kind of your personal trainer in your pocket, and trying to marry all the best things of Nike and marrying the best things of the device and what it can do for you. And having a personal trainer, which a lot of us, can't afford or can't really keep the schedule and want to have more flexibility, I think that was like one of the huge learnings for us, that we could actually provide that now. And putting it on a mobile device, it allows you to, work out wherever you want to. If it's outside, if it's indoors, if it's with friends, if it's alone. Like, it just helped you to get to the point of just being a better athletes and being more healthy. And so I think that was kind of, for us, one of the leaps into, this is the right thing to do from a mobile perspective. We're not creating basically just, another ad unit or another commercial. No, we're actually trying to give you, benefits and added value to your daily routine. And now we're basically communicating with our athletes on a regular basis. So there is not just this one time I see the ad and I'm done. It's like, no, we're like constantly in your pocket. We're working out with you. We can message back to you within your workouts. And I think that is just one example that we've been working on.
And a couple of you alluded to this in your responses before, but why is mobile ad measurement such a hard nut to crack?
I'm going to start, and then I have a feeling you'll finish and say all the really smart stuff I forgot to say. But again, if you think about it, first of all, we always try and put things into boxes, right? So if you're an e-commerce company and you have someone click to a mobile site and they purchase, awesome, measurement worked. I can track that. That's really easy. But you have to remember, not every advertiser is trying to get the same thing. If you're a film studio, you simply want them to go see the movie, right? We joke that a lot of companies were trying to the marketer was trying to build apps just because they thought that was how they would be able to track and measure the success of their advertising and any of their content. Guess what? Not every app makes sense, and we really don't think that some companies should make apps just to have them. So at Turn, because of our DMP, we have the mobile ID. So you're able to track, if you do have an app, great. You're not only able to track the download of that app, but you're able to track the other messaging and other opportunities off of the mobile device were impacted by either a mobile ad unit, by a download or an engagement with rich media. So again, it's about the analytics to not just give weight on something like we used to do in search, where all of the value was assumed to be in the search. It's actually not. In fact, we ran a study and we found that by adding mobile, even a small percentage of mobile advertising and messaging created a high impact performance to all of the campaign. If you coordinated the messaging and you were running display, pre-roll video, and mobile ad units, there was a 25% lift to your performance. So to go back to the answer, the question, measurement is hard because people do different things, and not every advertiser has a mobile product that makes sense. So you're going to need to use analytic products. You're going to need to be able to track in different ways, and you're probably going to need really smart people like Oleg helping you out.
Thank you.
He paid me $20. But
So as I mentioned before, cross-device attribution is key. So measuring the right things is what's important. You can start measuring more and more things within mobile, but how do I know if I'm measuring the right things, and how does that connect with my spend in desktop and different types of creatives that I spend? So being able to not only measure the creative, but being able to measure the segment that was informing the media that I bought, and where I showed the creative is what we would be looking for. And being able to connect those dots has been very difficult because of technical limitations in mobile, but it's getting better because it's not about the last click. We're spending on both, kind of in the entire funnel of buying, the top brand awareness down to the conversion, and how do I know that my awareness campaign on desktop informed my final purchase on an app. So being able to connect those dots is what we're looking for, and we need the accuracy to be able to do it efficiently.
I think there's so many different areas. So I think one thing that is key, and I think that's kind of my big education with my own clients, is really track. Like, start tracking everything you can. Like, if you have the chance, like, please do. And then do use the data, not just sit on it, because that's what big brands are known for too. They finally like, okay, fine, we'll include all the tracking technology that we can. We start tracking, and now we're sitting on a pile of data, and we're not doing anything with it. So that's the second thing. Track and do something with the data. And then I think, obviously to the degree that we have to start connecting the points, because I do work with a lot of retail clients, obviously CPG clients and so forth, what is then the next step is, how do we now track from our digital behavior all the way into the store? So that, how do we cross the lease line and understand what happens after that, and how what I just did, if it's a great digital product I brought out, if it's an ad unit that somebody saw, how do we connect that back to an actual active purchase? I bought the bottle of water, and I only did because I just saw, on the Weather Channel, it was hot, and they, had Crystal Geyser on there. So it's really that, that would be tremendously helpful. And to a degree, in all honesty, and retailers specifically know that, a lot of times their systems are not able to do that just yet. And for them, it's a huge investment to upgrade systems to really be able to track from the ad unit all the way back to your purchase in store. And so I think we still have a little way to go there, but at least the recognition and the understanding is there.
And what kinds of systems need to be put in place to do that by the retailers?
Oh, by the retailers?
Yeah.
I think it's anything from really the POS systems that are, more connected to either coupons or ad units, or how you can really starting to measure and measure back. So, years ago, 5, 6, we started working with some of the Bay Area retailers like the Gap Group, and we had all fantastic ideas, and it was, it was like, oh my God, this would be great to put in place. But, until you then realize the reality is such that we can do a lot of things on a digital site that we can control from either the agency or from partners, but then, what does really the infrastructure look like? What is the POS system? Can they actually scan barcodes on your phone, for example? It's like simple little things that you think dot, it must be so easy, and why doesn't everybody do that? But a lot of scanners, when I started in mobile, they couldn't read 2D barcodes off a phone. It just wasn't possible.
There may be a shorter path to that. The complexities of NFC and wallets and payments are still pretty substantial. It's a huge barrier. It's not going to be broken down very, very quickly. But using simple things within mobile applications like geofencing and then inferencing on top of that, based on other data and other signals that you can acquire from a user, can help you start to correlate. You delivered the ad in a particular context at a particular time on a particular device. You delivered it a second time. You delivered it a third time on a different device. As you draw those correlations and then you use geofencing, essentially to mechanize the movement of the individual into a particular retail location, you can set off from there. And it's a beginning to get to a point where you know the effectiveness of the advertising is starting to drive the user to a particular place. So I think there are some shorter-term solutions and combinations of technologies that would help to solve those problems. I want to go back just to there were one or two other fundamental things on why it's difficult. I think the breadth of platforms is becoming more of an issue again. For the past few years, we've all been able to focus on just a couple of big mobile OSs, and that's been great. It's been useful, and we could narrow down. I don't think that's going to be continue to be true for a lot of mid to larger size publishers. I know from our point of view, we're forced to confront some of the other OSs seriously. There are budgets behind it, there's technical R&D behind it, there's a credible player or two or four behind it. And so every time we add another platform to our portfolio, we're increasing the complexity of the analytics, the instrumentation. And that forces us to sort of confront the normalization of that data, and how do we roll it all up so we can see things apples to apples. And that's becoming, I think, increasingly a problem for the community.
Being able to measure it and making sure that all the technology and all the cost that goes into actually doing this is still cost effective. If the retail value of the bottle is $1 and we spend $2 driving somebody to purchase it, then it's a big waste of time and money.
So how swift do you think the progress is here? Like these problems, do you think they can be solved in the next year or two?
Depends on which problem. I mean, I think, because what I also want to encourage is that it is leaps and bounds over the last year alone, right? So just over the last year, the number of mobile IDs in our DMP so that you can do the cross-channel tracking. You can actually see measurement whether someone isn't going to have a real app, but they have a partnership with recipes, like a craft or something like that. Like the ability to track that is here, right? I think we are creating standards for ad delivery. That is here. Being able to target, not just on location, we're talking a lot about location, it's phenomenal, but just because I'm next to a gym doesn't mean I've actually been inside a gym in a really long time. I got 3 kids, right? I actually want a pizza joint because I don't want to cook dinner tonight. So context of the user along with location, those are starting to grow. I think that the other thing that we have to give credit to is mobile content. Getting content onto mobile devices is improving. You can watch high quality TV shows, right? So I think we've made huge strides. Now it's about going for it, right? If you're a marketer in the room, I don't know how many here are actually marketers, one of the first things I would say is make sure you're talking across departments so that data doesn't get stuck somewhere. Make sure you're talking across departments to make sure that when that search team runs a really fun and targeted promotion, you can do the same thing on mobile ad creatives and talk to your agency about it. So I think we've made huge strides. I agree, every single time there's a new OS, all of us tech people, which by the way, none of you want to actually pay us anything for it, us tech people have to go and build and do work. So what I would say is think about things that are hyper-targeting when it works for you, but also don't forget scale. Because just because you can go find that perfect person and you figured out that I want pizza and not a gym, if you can only find me one time every 4 days, it's not a good spend for your dollars.
So which OSs have you been building for that you're referring to?
So we're, by virtue of being the Weather Channel, we're almost everywhere. That's kind of not really optional. And we end up being first there since it's a daily habit. So it crosses mobile, it crosses some of the over-the-top things with Amazon, Apple, and Xbox and things like that. We're very solidly entrenched on iOS, Android, Windows as well. Some of the older, sorry for any BlackBerry folks here, not currently investing. But we also look at things like Tizen and whether Samsung and Intel are serious about that investment, which I think they are, and looking at the SDK and determining what's the right time to jump in. You want enough surface area, you want enough momentum, and you want there to be enough domain expertise in the marketplace that will support an entry into an application or an OS like that. So we look at those 4 or 5 criteria before we jump in. But again, it just expands the sort of the portfolio that you got to support and manage. And when it comes to instrumentation or analytics, not every vendor's on every platform. And sometimes you'll hear that I'll be there in 6 months, I'll be there in a year. Great, what do I do in the meantime?
But can I just say, this is one of the things I think we screw up in ad tech, marketing tech, whatever the thing you want to call it, is I don't know why we have to expect it from an advertiser's perspective to work on everything, on every device all of the time, right? I also think you as a marketer have to sit down and figure out, where are my consumers, how much budget am I going to spend, and what kind of prospecting and actual ad creative. Just because someone came in and pitched you a really cool idea and it seems like it could work, does it make sense for your brand? Does it make sense, and where are you going to be able to deliver it? And there's no harm in asking your agency or a vendor that you're partnering with, what would make sense for what we're trying to accomplish? Make sure you're still really focused on what your end goal is and how you're connecting with your consumer.
I think there might be 2 different questions. So when we talk about another OS or getting on sort of a sub-smartphone feature phone that's happening in India or Africa or whatever, you're suddenly talking about an international marketplace, right? So it's less about the advertising. It's even, to a certain extent, less about the analytics than it is the surface area, the competitive issues, being there, not being there. And if you've got global clients or you're a global brand, those are the kinds of things that you're sort of decisioning against. And that's how we factor in whether we're going on a new platform or not.
In the beginning, it's not about advertising analytics.
No, not at all.
Right.
In fact, in
Second
many of
you
those
get-
markets, it's sort of a semi-smart phone from Nokia on the Asha platform isn't going to generate a whole lot of advertising. But that said, for our purposes, being on that $30 phone in emerging markets is really important, because there's a lot we can do with weather, there's a lot we can do with alerts and safety, getting people out of the way of harmful events. So that's important to us as a brand and as a purveyor of that data.
Once we define that those people, fit a certain segment we want to target, then it becomes important.
Eventually, yeah.
Let's talk about location-based targeting, and what are some of the most effective use cases you've seen for it?
So effectiveness is still new, the term in mobile. We've done with Walmart, we've done an interesting one for last Black Friday, where we used a company called PlaceIQ that kind of takes the United States and cuts it up in squares, and you can target people geographically where they are within a couple of 100 feet. And for Black Friday, we've targeted Targets and Best Buy's parking lots. So as people would drive out to Target or Best Buy, and while they're in the parking lots or within those stores, we would show Walmart's discounts, which is right down the road with an exit number and everything else. So that was an interesting local experiment that we've done. But again, I think a lot of the stuff that we're doing right now are experiments.
Okay.
We've seen, so we have third-party data vendors who do that, and I think you're going to, again, if you start to think about when hyper-local makes sense, like really targeted local makes sense, there are those are the people who driving someone into the store and giving them a coupon or a message at that time matters. The other thing that I think is really interesting is we have a lot of customers using their first-party local data, right? Their own address and location within our platform, whether it be for conquesting, which is done a lot in automotive, or in retail. So don't forget that as a marketer, there are some really cool tools that you can use your own stuff. You can either bring people in because you know exactly where they are, and that's the beauty of mobile advertising, right? But I would also say, back to the example, and you guys think I'm joking about the gym versus pizza, but I'm not. But don't assume that just because they're in the right vicinity that you've got them at the right spot. You also do care as an advertiser about what they're reading and what they're doing at that time and who the user is. So data about lifestyle and affinity, which is becoming more and more available about the consumer, does matter.
I think another interesting point around location-based services and hyper-local is really what now we can do, even from a super hyper-local thing with iBeacons and really equipping the stores more intensely with direct connections, because then I have you already in the store. So now what can I do to make your store experience just the best experience you've had? what can I offer you to increase the shopping cart size? What can I offer you to just support you with help? Because how many of you, have been to big box retailers or even smaller retailers, and you're looking for something, and there's no sales associate nearby, there's nobody you can ask, and you're just like wandering around and getting upset that you're wasting so much time. So what can we do to also just make a better shopping experience happen for you? So I think that's definitely one of my focus areas.
I'll give one example of hyper-local. So by definition, the weather is extremely local. Right? If I can't get you a good weather forecast within a very small radius to you, you're disappointed, and you think I'm an idiot. So our focus is on billions and billions of data points to be able to isolate down to a specific radius. And what we've done with that information, though, is start to pile on weather triggers with the advertising programs. So we work with some of the largest retailers in the country. And essentially, we operate the process much like a hedge fund would operate, right? You take years and years and years worth of sales data and retail data down to a singular SKU, and then you correlate that with weather data, historical weather patterns. And you look for observations, you look for insights, you look for all those correlations where certain things happen that you wouldn't expect to. You'd expect to sell a lot of beer on a hot, sunny afternoon in the summer. That would be obvious. There are many, many less obvious results or instances that you can take. And what you can do with that is start to correlate and inform the advertiser exactly where to put their dollars at a particular point in time. So as a storm cell is moving up from the south into Manhattan, we are actually firing weather-triggered advertising for a bunch of advertisers in the area, know exactly what to do. As interesting, although somewhat counterintuitive for the business, is our ability to tell the advertiser when to hold back on their spending.
Right.
So it turns out that those correlations work in reverse, where certain units, certain volumes, certain products are not moving at all when you think they would based on weather patterns. But the value of the 1-2 punch of that value has been extremely efficient.
Yeah, you just reminded me of a great example of a retailer who used local, again, their first-party data to make sure that they pulled back when they ran out of iPhone 5s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
right?
exactly.
That's a big issue. You don't want to get someone in the store and be like, oh, sorry, we don't have any more of that. So they're actually starting to line it up with their supply systems as well. Yeah. And it's not wasted dollars on advertising. It's a better consumer experience. You'll try and get them the next time, right?
It requires two things. One, you've got to have the knowledge and the insight of what it is you're trying to do. Obviously, you need the systems hooked up. So in this case, an inventory system that is tied to the point where you know when the inventory is down to a 10% buffer, turn off the advertising, stop wasting. You've got enough momentum and trajectory. I think those things have to be true, and those are not going to happen for every advertiser. You've got to have a pretty good level of sophistication.
Are there also cases when advertisers might pull back because the weather's so bad they know nobody's going to go out and buy anything?
Those are the use cases we find, right?
Yeah.
So if you have a huge snowstorm going into a particular area, other than selling a lot of shovels at Home Depot, you're peace out, right? Everybody makes a run to the grocery store, stocks up, and then everybody shuts down for 12 or 14 hours. So it's those correlations and then using the weather ahead of time to say, let's get those campaigns moving right now, because you probably got 10 hours ahead of the storm or 12 hours ahead of the storm. After that, stop and give it a rest.
So verticals like gaming and travel seem very sophisticated in terms of the mobile advertising they do and in terms of the ROI they get. But what other verticals do you see kind of catching up, getting more sophisticated, maybe investing more in the next year or so?
With us, we've been looking at auto. I feel that's the next one to break through because the research for the car is mostly still done on a laptop, on a desktop. And then there's this black hole once the person gets out of the house, gets into a car on the way to a dealership with stopover at Starbucks or wherever else. Can we still reach them and find them in those areas while they're still in the process of making a decision? Can we show them something that will motivate them once they get to the dealership? So if we can figure that one out, I think that's going to be a really new influx into targeting automotive and mobile.
Yeah, so sorry, go ahead. I was just going to say, financial services, surprisingly, if you think about how the evolution of the banking app has changed, now their comfort level of upselling and giving new promotions via marketing is growing. And even insurance companies are leveraging data because they know for a fact, a company like Progressive knows exactly who their buyer is. They know exactly what income, spend level, when they buy, and they're actually starting to buy recently purchased auto data. Makes sense. I just bought a new car. it's way more expensive than I should have. I should upgrade my insurance. So those are some of the other verticals that we're seeing growing. But I would expect them all to participate. I think, again, instead of putting everybody in a box, it's what will they be doing, whether it be open prospecting type of marketing in mobile versus nurturing and managing their existing customer experience.
I think one of the very, I don't want to say they were the very first ones, but they were definitely in the mix were really the entertainment business. They were from day one, pre-iPhone, already thinking about how can we use the mobile device in bringing basically the content to the consumer and helping them make those choices. If it's like going to a movie, combining a movie and a restaurant and things like that. So those were really looking back at some of our clients and what I've seen in mobile. The entertainment industry has always been kind of very pushing on those on the edge and seeing how they can get to that contextual, location, time-based environment.
Yeah, they have such good content to start with.
It helps.
There's been some news recently about Instagram and Pinterest launching their ad businesses and having a very premium ad offering. I think Instagram, a campaign could be nearly $1 million a month. Do you think there'll be more premium inventory on mobile, or is there already a lot of premium?
I think, I'll just make a quick comment. I think we as publishers will make more effort to both marshal and create more premium inventory. As difficult as it is and as sort of unknown as some of those things are, we will work on new products and new experiences and maybe some of the integration that Tina referred to earlier. In part, a reaction to sort of a desire to move upstream with larger programs, larger campaigns, and being able to take care of customers in a meaningful way. Also, in part, as a reaction, I think, to the success of programmatic in the marketplace and the changes that approach is driving and is likely to drive for the foreseeable future. Those are very real things. Even as a publisher with a lot of inventory, I've got to take care to work out a strategy where we've got a feature around premium ads and premium integration, as well as managing effectively on the programmatic side.
Well, first of all, the whole concept of premium, I think, is in the eye of the beholder, right? Just because I think your stuff is premium, I do. I do. And by the way, if you do mess up and tell me it's going to be a different, I'm really pissed off. But we have to understand that the marketer is going to decide what they believe is premium content. Now, if you mean premium on the price, we're seeing the price that people will pay for mobile jumping significantly. I unfortunately don't have the stat, and my brain is shot. But it is rising. Programmatic is also allowing for a little bit more transparency. So if you're on a quality app or a mobile web experience, that is being passed over in programmatic, and the marketer can choose the quality level and the content context. So what are they actually doing when they're on that app? All of those things make the marketer more comfortable with paying a higher price, right? But I want us to be very, very careful in saying that this is premium. Now, custom is one thing. If you're going to do custom or native ads and it's only sold by the publisher, you're going to have less scale, you're going to have more friction in there, but you're going to be able to cater that specifically to the marketer. It's just like the advertorial world, right? It's just like product placement in a TV show where there's a huge Apple sign there. But the prices are going up because the quality of the content is getting bigger, and the systems that can pass that over to the marketer so they can make the decision are there.
I also feel to a degree that it's waves we're going through. We had very high prices when I started in mobile. We had like $100 CPMs in mobile, believe it or not. And then, it's kind of this, in the beginning we had very high prices, then we had a lot of people coming into the market, you had more inventory, prices went down. I think there is also a little bit of a, demand and supply, and it's also supply from a company's perspective. When iAds started out, they had a very high cap too. You had to have a very high entry point to work with them. But why was that? Because it was highly customized. There was a lot of work that flew into that execution, and to a degree, the teams were small. They couldn't deliver as many as they might have wanted to for a lower price. And I think that's to a degree, and this is like pure speculation on my side, I think that's also happening on Pinterest and Instagram, for example. I don't know how big their teams are to really help push this through. Maybe they have to have this high price point at the moment to even deliver on actually the demand that is coming in, because it's a hot platform, and there are new ways of reaching consumers, especially in areas where you have your peers reviewing products and giving you great recommendations. And so I think to me, I think it's kind of a wave, and we'll hit a very high point again, and then the market will be flooded more. We're adding more ad networks like Facebook. Who knows? I don't know. This is just from looking to into history and seeing what has happened there.
All right, we have a couple minutes left. I'd love to take your questions. Anybody?
I see a hand over there too.
I recently sat in on a programmatic marketing roundtable with some other smart people, such as yourselves, and they lamented a lot of the challenges of tracking mobile. And one of the panelists suggested owning your own data and potentially investing in an infrastructure to track your data rather than just rely on your vendors. And I was curious if you guys had any thoughts on that, owning your own data as opposed to with
As a
like
marketer?
DataZoo or
As a marketer, yeah. So if you're the marketer and you have a very popular app and you collect data about that user and you can leverage it, you have the rights to leverage it either for your own marketing, upselling, nurturing of campaign, absolutely. I highly recommend. Now, owning it and then building $1 million database and warehouse for you to store it, that's different. So that is, when we talk about our data management platform, it is your own piece of technology. No one else can access your data. It doesn't go anywhere else. You're choosing how you store it. You can buy third-party data to do analytics and overlay and do targeting, but it is yours. So absolutely, highly recommend that. I think the other important piece, though, is going back to that, what is that end goal? What do you want to do with that data? What insight do you want to get out of it, and what might you change to make sure that whatever technology you choose, it can syndicate or pull out and report in the way that benefits your business, right? Does that make sense?
As an agency, it's absolutely critical to us to develop this kind of data management platform where we can create new segments based on our partnerships, because not only onboarding our clients' data, but also marrying it with data from our supply side partners and creating those kind of custom targeting opportunities there. That's what's going to differentiate us.
I realize I'm at the Source conference, so I'll be respectful, but you should do it. There's no reason not to own your own data to build or rent your own infrastructure to be able to play with it any way you like. I think the good news is it's not as costly as it used to be. The entry points are actually very reasonable. There are companies here in the Bay Area like Keen.io or Natera that specialize in basically just exporting all of your events, right? They'll just eat everything you have. You're going to pay a little bit for it, but in return, they'll give you a console and let you access it almost any way you can. So you're not operating under limitations of whatever analytics vendor has given you or not given you, as the case may be. You're not further beholden to the cost structure of those events and logging everything. And in the end, it's your data. And so you don't always have to go back to the vendor. Now, that said, a lot of the good analytics vendors that we work with provide a panel to be able to push those events back out to a Hadoop cluster somewhere to do whatever you want with it. And so it may not be the case that you need to go roll your own. You can work with the vendor and have it pushed back out and still have access to it through SQL or whatever you want.
Yeah, I think that's going back. It really does matter what you want to do with it,
Yeah.
and also what you're willing to pay on your own to handle it. If you want to monetize your data, I mean, so Verizon has done a partnership with Turn. So Verizon has enough mobile data in where they have built a business off of it. They're Verizon, right? It's extremely successful. Clients are thrilled about it. But also be clear in what kind of business you're running in the storing. And again, do you want to monetize the data? If so, I highly recommend one of the already skilled pre-integrated platforms who can do that for you.
Okay. I think we're out of time, unless there's a really quick, yeah, please.
I'm just curious about user acquisition going through, obviously, ad network channels versus doing direct deals. Have you found more success in one or the other. By being able to work directly, obviously, with some publishers, you can kind of better target your relevant audience, right, based on content and interests. Whereas oftentimes you don't have that control when you're working with an ad network. So I'm just kind of curious to see what your feedback or what your experience has been with both approaches.
I mean, scale will always be an issue. So for top of the funnel, we want those direct relationships, but when we really need to reach a lot of people very, very quickly, not really an ad network, but basically that, because programmatic is kind of evolution of what ad network was, and just the promise of making it more efficient and quicker, but the reason for doing it is still there. We still need to be able to find a lot of people very, very quickly and cost effectively, and that's right now the way to do it.
I think it goes back to what your objective is. Like, do I try to reach a very precise and highly targeted audience, and I want to do it in a way that it doesn't feel like advertising, and I want to really create more of a contextual experience, then yes, direct publisher relationships are key, because that's the way to really create some very specific, never been done before kind of experiences. So it really depends on what really your ultimate goal would be.
And it has to be meaningful.
So there's not one that is better than the other.
Right, and it has to be meaningful, because you still need to, even if it's one-to-one, you still need to find enough audience to show, because it costs so much more probably to develop it to something custom to a specific publisher. So if you already put up all the money developing it, you want to make sure enough people are going to see it.
Okay, I think we have to go. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.